All right, Donald Trump making his pitch to states voting in primaries today. Michigan in particular, putting his Rust Belt strategy to the test.
A normal Republican cannot think in terms, frankly, I hate to say this, cannot think in terms of bringing in Michigan. And if you don't bring in Michigan, that's, it's tough. It makes it, you have a very narrow road. Structurally, it's very hard for a Republican to get elected, structurally. But I'm going to bring in places like Michigan. I think we're going to win Michigan. Who is going to vote? Who is going to vote for Hillary over Trump? Do you want Trump? Who wants Hillary?
All right, turns out no one wanted Hillary there. If Donald Trump wins the GOP nomination, could he be the first Republican to win Michigan since 1988? And is it time for the GOP establishment to embrace Donald Trump if he could do just that? Here to discuss is Fox News legal analyst Peter Johnson, Jr. Peter, another reason to focus on today is Michigan, correct? It really could be a bellwether for a lot of reasons.
It could. Donald Trump is ahead, although some polls show that John Kasich is pulling ahead in terms of this race in Michigan. And a lot of observers are saying, well, this is a Rust Belt state, meaning that industry left it, the auto industry in part left it as well. A lot of disaffected white voters, some who will leave the Democratic Party to join Republican ranks today to say, I'm voting for Donald Trump or I'm voting for one of the other Republican contenders going forward. But if you look at the statistics in the past, over the last 8 presidential races in the state of Michigan, the last time Republicans won was back in '84 and '88 with Bush and Reagan.
Right.
And so that so-called Reagan-Democrat coalition in terms of the Rust Belt states like Michigan hasn't reappeared since that time. And so Donald Trump can put that together.
Romney lost by 10, McCain lost by 13, Bush lost by 3.
And the polling now shows that Hillary Clinton beats Donald Trump in the state of Michigan head-to-head if a general election were to be held today. That can change, obviously. But it's interesting that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are appealing to many of the same white male Americans, putting their hopes in Rust Belt states to some extent going forward for the primaries and, of course, for the general election.
Now, Peter, if you look at the people voting for Donald Trump, a lot of them are blue-collar workers.
Yes.
So that could be it. And what is he saying? I'm going to bring the jobs back. He says, I'm going to call the CEO of Ford for hours after taking over. I'm going to call him and say, bring those jobs back. And you know he's going to. And that's resonating.
It is resonating. And people love to hear it in a crowd of 20 or 25,000 people that, as Huey Long said back in the 1930s, every man can be a king in the United States of America, that we can make America great again. And it pumps them up to say, we're not going to take it anymore from Mexico. We're not going to take it anymore from Mexico. They're not going to take our jobs, and I'm going to pay them back with a tariff. Now, we know the issues with regard to a tariff. Tariff has opposed wars on society since the beginning of civilization, economic and then military wars. So there's a lot of ramifications in terms of tariffs and how it affects
paying more for cars.
Foreign policy. Absolutely. But it feels good. And it feels good for a lot of Americans to say, listen, there's a new order here in the world. We're not going to put up with it anymore.
Right.
And so it's very satisfying to hear Donald Trump say that. He will probably have success in the state of Michigan, and he will continue forward. The issue is, will late deciders move to Trump, or are they moving towards Kasich and others in this race?
Peter Johnson, Jr., thanks so much.
Good to see you.
It's going to be good to watch tonight. We'll have our coverage all night long.